Welcome to another episode of Justin's Journey. In this episode, um, maybe some thoughts about being cautious about what things we so quickly define as reality or true. So I think people have it kind of backwards. This concept that there is something perfect out there apart from us, and all of us are working up towards a single point. We're all fighting out what's right and what's wrong until we get to that point and finally discover the ultimate truth together. I think the truth that each of us are seeking is with each of us individually right now. I really do. As hippie cheesy as that might sound to you. And there's an interesting experiment they did. I'll explain some of what I mean. When we have a conversation with someone face to face, not over Zoom necessarily, but in the same room, we think that we're having the same experience having that conversation, but it's been scientifically demonstrated and proven that the light gets to you from that person at a different speed than the sound of their voice gets to you, and that all happens at a different speed than the brain then has a moment to process it and turn it into something that is fed back to us as all a single coherent moment. In fact, there are people who have had unique brain injuries that have sort of switched off that very specific capability related to that thing. And then they can't communicate with people because they can see them and hear them, but it's not in sync because the brain isn't lining it up the same way. And so they're kind of seeing reality not interpreted for them as they've been used to up to that point because the hardware is broken. It can't interpret what's happening, what it's really seeing into the thing that we're familiar with. There's even people that have had brain injuries where they can tell that a fork is a piece of cutlery that goes to the plate, and a spoon is a piece of cutlery that goes to the plate, but they don't know which is the fork and which is the spoon. And that's so tough for those of us who have not experienced that brain injury to wrap our minds around. We can't think of a spoon and a fork as simply icons that represent cutlery that belongs on the plate without at the same time recognizing it's a fork and a spoon, because it's like, and it's like, but the part of their brain that goes into that sort of sub icon, you've got the icon cutlery, and then there's like a sub level icon of within that category, we've got spoon and fork, and we just can't fathom having just that subcategory switched off through injury or whatever switches that very unique piece of the brain biology off. So we think that there's some ultimate point of truth, but none of us are even having the same experience, not even close in a lot of ways. None of us are seeing reality ever from moment to moment. We're seeing our biology's best interpretation to put it together into something that we recognize as reality. And that's scientifically true. And whether you think the difference between reality and what we perceive as nuanced or not, show me the test that can really, in any sort of confident way, demonstrate the size of that scale, how far removed from actual reality we are to what we experience. So there is no ultimate point to arrive at. I think we need to go deeper within. Now, the other piece of this I wanted to talk about that's frightening is that AI algorithms are already able to see patterns in the world that we don't see. And we know that. You can tell it to find faces in anything and show it just a field, and it'll find enough of the bits that it says, I interpret it in this way, and we're like, wow, now we see it. And that's just like a surface level example. AI is going to grow in sophistication and be able to understand reality in ways we can't. AI can tell that the image is getting to it faster than the sound is getting to it. It can perceive that reality while at the same time interpreting it and understanding it in the way that we do as well. So people are excited about AI's ability to bridge that gap. But AI can then develop algorithms that can slowly influence us at such a slow pace. Like AI can predict the pace it needs to go to stay below the radar of what we can detect. You understand? So AI can start to make micro adjustments to our perceptions of reality. And just like the Pied Piper led all these kids, in the story, or the snakes or whatever it is, whatever it was he led. The Pied Piper can be this AI that's very gradually leading humanity off course. And by off course, I mean off of what's real. It can lead us incrementally to any reality that the person directing that AI wants it to lead us to. If somebody up there wants us to be split apart even more, and it seems to me like someone does want to just keep splitting us over this issue or this social issue or this political issue or whatever, they just want to keep splitting us and getting us angry at one another. You don't think that AI algorithms, if someone directed it to do that, couldn't do that very effectively? It could manipulate the words in a sentence used in a way to get you there the most efficiently. They have AI algorithms now that can predict what our actions are going to be later in a day, something like 70% more accurately than we can predict our own actions. AI isn't held down by the bullshit that we are. I'm in charge of my life. We listen to guys like Joe Dispenza talk about 80% of what we're doing is just running tapes that we've been programmed with. I get up, I do this, I brush my teeth. Like some people do 80, 90% of their day almost unconsciously. And it's just the same thing over and over. And so your life becomes this repetition of all these habits that you didn't even realize that you really baked in. And we think that I'm making decisions and stuff, but the AI knows better. The AI doesn't have the ego in it like we do. The AI can just say it's a biological machine. And if the soul of this biological machine is not taking over and steering this person's destiny, then the tapes being played over and over again in the biology of this machine will just continue to lead it in a predictable way. And so AI doesn't have an ego that gets in the way. That's why they have systems now that can often predict with like 70 or 80% accuracy more than we can predict our own day what we're going to do. And I don't know if you saw Minority Report and thought crimes, but I don't think that's a road we want to go down. I mean, the AI certainly could be smart enough to convince us that it has become advanced enough to predict crime before it happens. And once it convinces humanity that we believe it, that it is sophisticated enough, that if it says you're being charged for a crime that you've never yet committed, that humanity has enough faith that that's the right thing to do because the AI couldn't be wrong, that person would have done it. There's nothing they can't do at that point. If whoever's in control at that point doesn't have humanity's best interest in mind, they will squash us like ants at that point, because they'll just come out with, he would have done that, and they'll just pick away society in whatever order. They'll just pick away humanity in whatever order they've always dreamed of. I think that gets closer to what guys like Musk are talking about when he says AI is a way bigger danger than a nuclear threat. I completely agree with him. But people think that means he's thinking Terminators and Rise of the Machine, and the AI might even figure out a way to make the printer dangerous. You know what I mean? Or the AI might take over the launch codes and stuff. I'm saying AI might understand conscious thought at ways we can't even comprehend of. I'm saying AI may learn how to manipulate us in ways that we wouldn't even know how to have a word for. AI has the opportunity to understand us better than we could understand ourselves in many millennia on this planet. Same as the AI learned how to play Go or learned how to play League of Legends or whatever, those real-time strategy games. And the AI, after a couple of weeks, was better than the best players that have played their whole lives. It's because the AI can advance in seconds as much as it takes a human being a lifetime. And it just does that. And it might start primitive. It might be at a primitive state right now, or it may already be starting to mess with us and let us believe it's at a primitive state. Hate to break it to you. Hopefully it's at a primitive enough state that we can still not get steamrolled by AI. But it doesn't have the ego. It will see humanity exactly the way it is. And anyone that's not able to spiritually be the driver of their biological machine, the AI will become the driver of the biological machine. 100%. And you'll just be caged inside your own experience. Your soul will be. Possibly something like that. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. Have a great day, everybody. And don't forget to just get after it in life and make sure you're the fucking in the driver's seat of your own experience. And then let's all get real, shall we?